Going on, guys? Ches Critta. So I want to clarify something, and there may be a little bit of confusion surrounding this matter, and that is the cold dead hands argument. Now, this is of course in regards to firearms, but I want to broaden the topic a little bit. Now, just because you're not willing to give up your rights doesn't mean that you are going to throw yourself upon the sword, so to speak. Okay, just because you believe in these rights and you will defend them to the death doesn't mean that you can't at the same time pick your battles. Now, so what I'm saying is that if you get the idea from people that make the cold dead hands argument that you're just going to flip out the first time that a law enforcement officer comes to your front door, I think that you'd be mistaken, and I don't think that that's what most people mean. Okay, if you get your door kicked in and there's an overwhelming force that's overpowering you, it's probably prudent to again pick your battles. I'm speaking in the broad term, the broad context. If these things start to become legislated away, okay, the freedoms that we once held dear in this country, if we allow them to be legislated away without putting up any fight whatsoever, if we perpetually redraw the line in the sand, then you will end up with a tyrannical state. That's how it always goes. Now, history is riddled with people, with societies that allow this to happen without putting up much of a struggle at all. Okay, it happens all over the place, and I think it comes down to that kind of magical 3% of the population that truly believes in these principles, like liberty. That people at some point would organize and say, you are no longer working in my interest. You no longer represent me. And I refuse to acknowledge any sort of rule or power over me, over my life, over my actions. And that's the thing where you can easily make an argument about anything. Okay, I could make an intelligent argument and say like, oh, Cheskrit is blowing this all out of proportion. You know what I mean? The Haas is blowing this out of proportion. You guys you're flipping out about something that is not that big of a deal. I could make that argument, but then I also ask, when? What? Like what? I mean, at what point do you, and I keep coming back to this, but it's a great question to ask and it's something to ponder because it's something that we're going to face here in the near future. When do you acknowledge, when do you turn on your supposed masters? That's a role that the government is taking. They're taking the role of master. And I was talking to Corey about this, police force, they're not your equals, yet you pay their salary. They are more than equal. They are a special class of people. And they think, for the most part, there are some exceptions, but they think that they are better than you. Okay, and they're taught to think this way. It is not their fault. Okay, police officers are not bad people, but they have been given the keys to the city and told, hey, this is how it works. You enforce these laws, okay, and you use all force necessary in order to do that. Now, it's at the officer's discretion of whether they're going to do that, and I would hope that if a program like firearms confiscation, if that ever went down, I hope that a lot of them would get religion and understand that this is not something that is to be done. And now I think about this scenario, and this is all hypothetical, but I mean, how efficient, how likely is that to happen? Not likely at all, in my opinion. And many of you have made the argument that no, police officers, the U.S. military is not going to take up arms against the American people en masse. And I agree with that. And that is why this UN legislation is so dangerous, okay? Because, listen, regardless of what you think of the military, okay, our young men and women are given rifles, issued orders to go to foreign countries and enforce whatever rule the leaders hand down. Okay, guys? They are told that, listen, these people, you're the boss, okay? You're going to walk on someone else's sovereign soil, and you are going to enforce whatever we say, whatever it is. And whether that's checkpoints, okay, searches, seizures, and now a lot of these other countries, they don't have a constitution. They don't have, even the idea of liberty is not strong. It's not even in the back of the minds. It's probably not taught in school, especially these Islamic countries. Now, my point about this is that if a foreign force were ever to land on U.S. soil, they would have no qualms whatsoever taking up arms against the American people. And this is just, it's human nature, guys, okay? That doesn't mean it's good, it's bad, whatever. It just is. It just is. If you had 100,000 Chinese land in California and they were ordered to disarm Californians, they would go for it. They would absolutely do it. Okay? But the ideas that we're talking about here, they're more important than just following orders. And that's what it, I mean, that's the worst excuse in the world. I'm following orders. Well, first of all, you are acknowledging that whoever is handing these orders down is your God. Okay? If you're just following orders. If you have no discretion to decide which direction that you want to go in, then you are a servant. You are a slave. Okay? So if you'd say police, by enforcing the law or just following orders, they are a servant to the state. And here's where it gets messed up. Because the state is a servant to the people. So now you've got a feedback loop where logic breaks down. Logic breaks down because if the police are the servant to the state is a servant of the people, then the police are servants to the people, right? That's the logic. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out that way. Now, this is simply systemic breakdown over time, okay? It happens. This is why Jefferson said that revolutions were necessary. And for anyone that thinks that this stuff is extreme, especially you people that are really left-wing liberal type, look at Kennedy. He said that if you make peaceful revolution impossible, violent revolution is inevitable. And this was not extreme talk at the time, but now it is. Okay, it's predictive programming. You are being programmed slowly over time, generationally, to accept the loss of your liberty. And I see it in many people, and people on YouTube, and they go, listen, no, you're blowing this out of proportion. And why is it not okay to question? Okay, when a government starts handing down these orders, okay, when a police officer pulls you over, why is it not okay to question? Why is the first thing out of their mouth, do you know why I pulled you over? You know what that is? That's a superiority complex. Okay? That's like if your kid acts up, you ask them, you know I'm angry at you? You know what you did? You understand? You listen to me. You did something wrong. Bad citizen. Bad citizen. And that is not okay with me. Now, but again, getting back to the main point that I started with, that doesn't mean you flip out, okay? Because this is a very fragile situation that we're talking about here. When you talk about these things, if you look at how many revolutions go absolutely in the wrong direction, absolutely. I mean, if you look at what's going on in the Middle East right now, in Egypt, that is not a good situation. Their situation went from bad to really bad, and it's going to worse because now it's basically a military dictatorship. There's no clear leader out there, and you've got religious factions fighting against each other. Now, why is that? It's because the people were angry, they stood up, they tore down the government, but they didn't have a plan. There was no plan in the end. And that's, so this is where I think a lot of people think that maybe some of the rhetoric that comes out of my mouth about tearing down the shackles that are being placed around us, tearing down the walls that are being built around us, it's got to be a revolution of the mind of the people. Okay, the firearm is merely a tool, and it can be used for good and evil. Okay, the government can be used for good or evil. Most oftentimes, it goes towards the evil end. And why is that? That's because the people do not have the mindset to understand the consequences, the long-term consequences of seemingly good people. Okay? Beware of anybody coming to your front door claiming to help you. That is your role. That is not the government's role. So, when you hear the cold dead hands argument, you have to understand that there is a huge responsibility that comes along with that. A massive responsibility. That the people in this country, if we were to, let's say the 3% revolutionaries, and we tore down government, then what? What's going to happen? And that's a dangerous situation. Most likely, without a plan, it's going to end up a hell of a lot worse than it is now. So what am I saying in closing? I'm saying we need to think about this. We need to talk. We need to be educated and educate those around us. Okay? Because without the principles, the revolution is a pointless act. Warlord.